You know that voice, right? The one inside your head that's constantly running, commenting on everything, telling the story of your life. We all have it. But have you ever actually stopped and asked yourself, who is that narrator? And maybe more importantly, is it telling you the absolute truth? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dig into a framework that helps us understand that narrator and, crucially, learn how to see what's really going on.
So here's our roadmap. We'll start with that voice inside. Then, we'll introduce a new map for our inner world called traffic light processing, or TLP for short. We'll get into why our physical state actually comes before our mental story and see how we get stuck in these threat feedback loops. Then, we'll get practical and talk about how to practice the pause. And finally, we'll see how all of this puts you back in the driver's seat.
Okay, so let's start with this massive idea. What if that inner voice, the one you probably think of as you, isn't giving you the objective facts? What if the story it tells you changes depending on something else entirely?
Seriously, just think about it for a second. What kind of stories does your inner monologue tell you, especially when you're feeling a bit stressed or overwhelmed? Is it a supportive voice, or does it tend to jump to the worst-case scenario?
For instance, picture this. You're with a group of people, and a couple of them turn to have a quick side chat. Your narrator might immediately whisper this story in your ear, and in that moment, it feels 100% true. It's a really compelling story, isn't it? And if that feeling gets stronger, the story can really ramp up. It goes from a simple observation to this huge catastrophic statement. Your narrator has just built an entire truth about your life from a tiny moment.
But what if, in that exact same situation, the narrator could tell a totally different story? A story that's more flexible, more measured. This little detail hints at something huge. The narrator's story isn't fixed. It changes based on our internal state. And understanding that, well, that's the whole key.
So to really get this, we need a better map of our inner world. And that's where this framework called traffic light processing, or TLP, comes in. It's just a brilliant metaphor for what's actually happening underneath the surface.
So, TLP has three main parts. First, you've got the traffic light. This is basically the state of your nervous system. Is it sensing safety or threat? Then you've got the car, which is your body's physical response, your heart rate, your muscles tensing up. And the driver? Well, that's your inner narrator, the one telling the story.
And this leads us to the single biggest idea in this whole framework. We usually think our thoughts create our feelings. But what if, most of the time, it's actually the other way around?
Right, here's how it actually works. First, the traffic light shifts. Your nervous system picks up on some cue of risk or safety in the environment. Second, the car changes. Your body instantly reacts. Your heart might beat a bit faster. And only then, after all that, does the driver, your inner voice, create a story to make sense of what just happened. The story is often just an explanation for a feeling that's already there.
And just look at the difference this makes. When your light is orange or red, meaning your system is sensing a threat, the narrator gets really defensive, catastrophic. It tells you they are ignoring me. But when that light is green, the narrator is way more flexible. It might just observe, we are operating from different states. It's the same situation, but a completely different story. And it all depends on the state of your nervous system. Okay, so if the story is just a reflection of our state, why does it feel so real and so powerful? Well, that's because of something called the threat feedback loop. And this explains why it's so easy to get stuck in those negative thought patterns.
Let's just walk through it. So, a state shift happens. Your light flips to orange. Your inner narrator jumps in with a threat-based story to explain it. But here's the catch. The moment you believe that story, it reinforces the feeling of threat, which keeps your traffic light stuck on orange or even red. And then your narrator starts actively scanning for more evidence to prove its story right, trapping you in this vicious cycle.
And the more times you go around that loop, the stronger those connections in your brain become. It literally becomes a well-traveled road, making that threat-based way of thinking your automatic go-to response.
So how on earth do you get out of this loop? Well, the answer isn't to get into a big argument with your inner narrator. It's about learning to create just a tiny bit of space, a pause, between that shift in your state and the story you tell yourself about it.
And this is so important. The work isn't about trying to silence that inner voice. It's about understanding it. It's about being able to see that a thought is just the output of your system being in a particular state. The goal is to simply put it in context, not to fight it.
And here are three simple but incredibly powerful questions you can ask yourself to practice that pause. First, what light am I in? Just that act of noticing, am I in orange or red right now? Second, is this a state narrative or a stable fact?
This helps you separate a temporary feeling from some kind of absolute truth. And third, my favorite, what would this thought sound like in green? This is an amazing question for helping you imagine a different, more flexible way of seeing things.
And all of this leads to a massive shift in how you see yourself. When you can see the light and you can put the story in context, you completely change your relationship with your own mind. You're no longer just a passive passenger being bossed around by your narrator.
And this, right here, is the core message. You are not your narrator. You aren't the stories it tells you, especially the ones it cooks up when it's in a threat state. You are the driver, the one who can learn to notice the traffic light, feel the state of the car, and choose how to respond to whatever story the narrator is spinning.
And this opens up a whole new world of possibility. Because once you learn to read the light, to understand your own state, you're no longer a victim of those automatic stories. You actually have a choice. So the only question left is, where do you want to go?